Hello, welcome to Money Matters with Matt and Rich. Minus Matt today. He's moving. He's moving, and it's just me solo in the studio. But I did get somebody on the line who I think will be helpful in learning a different piece of the real estate puzzle. So what I mean by that is, you contact a real estate agent, they help you buy, they help you sell. They help you invest. But what's another way to get properties or to buy properties other than, what's on the MLS? Well, there's off-market transactions that happen. Those happen all the time. And there's more than one way to get an off-market transaction. And that's, through something called wholesaling, off-market marketing, direct letter stuff. And that's kind of what we'll chat about today. I'm not really sure where to go because, Matt's not here to pick me up. So I do have Jeremy Chartier on the line. He's with Tall Pine Properties, and he is the founder and executive of this of that company. Jeremy, why don't you say hello?
Hey, executive's a fancy word for it, but
Yeah. It's you're the boss. You're the boss, man. You created this. Tell me a little bit about how you came into this and what what you're doing.
yeah. So I just kind of got started with this business at the beginning of this year. So, rewind about 2 years when we bought our first personal residence, my wife and I, and never really thought much about real estate before that. Had no idea how to even buy a personal residence.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of started with a lender and got pre-approved. And then we found an agent who was referred to us by the lender
Mm-hmm.
and ended up going with him. And we just looked around for a while. We're talking summer of 2020 when things were
Fun.
really heating up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was tough. We didn't get our offer accepted on the first house that we looked at. That's for sure.
Tell me about summer of 2020. So you made at least one offer that summer.
Yeah, so it kind of started off. We were looking in southern New Hampshire here. My wife and I both lived in New Hampshire our entire lives, and we knew we wanted to kind of, next step to starting our family was buying a house since we were living in 800 square feet with a roommate, so
Yeah.
not ideal for families. So
Not conducive. No,
um,
definitely not.
so yeah, I mean, we were seeing a really challenging time as a buyer, as continued on for probably another year and a half after that, or probably close to 2 years. Um,
Were you making offers on properties along the way, or were you just kind of not finding the right stuff?
yeah, so obviously inventory was pretty limited, but what we were finding that was going on market, we were like kind of lining up outside of these houses to take a look at them, and we're like, oh boy, someone here is going to outbid us.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, it ended up happening
Sure.
a couple times.
Yeah.
We actually looked at.
Yeah, like every other home buyer, the last few years, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we looked at a couple nice houses, but we had kind of a hard time. So we ended up finding one that was just outside of where we wanted. We live over here in Lineborough, small town, 1,200 people, and so we put our offer in that was well over asking. 2 days after it was on market, got it under contract, and the rest is history. So
No.
fast forward about a year from there is when. After that happened, I was really interested in real estate and I kind of understood it a little bit better. So fast forward about a year to August of 2021, I bought my first investment property, which was still have it. It's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and
Wait a second.
so
out of state investing.
yeah, and so I had joined a mastermind that kind of emphasized, cash flow from afar, and you can do this. And so they had some investor agents that were really well versed, and dealing with out of state people and helping, they were all investors themselves. So it made things easier. They kind of understood.
What's now? What's
So
that? What's that mastermind called? It might be good for people listening or myself to kind of understand
yeah,
what that means and where to find them.
yeah. So that one's called Addicted to ROI,
Mm-hmm. Return on
or
investment.
Agents Invest.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So they basically have like this forum where you can ask questions, kind of get an understanding from people who are doing long distance investing. But they also, like I said, have that network of agents that's really used to working with investors.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, the property that we bought was actually not listed on there, but they kind of have a bulletin board of properties that are for sale, that the agents will put on there as well for extra exposure. We had put in an offer on a property that was on there, didn't get accepted, but I found another one that was just down the road, and that's the one we ended up buying. So that was a 3-unit.
3 unit. Yeah. Cause I was going to say, can you? I know we've kind of taken a little detour here, and as far as you and your business, but I'd love to hear about that 3 unit. The details about that.
Yeah, yeah. So that one's it's a little bit like Manchester, I would say, where it's like this area of Milwaukee is all much older multifamily houses. So this one was built in like 1890, and we just kind of ran the numbers on it, and the numbers seemed to make sense, and so we ended up buying it.
What were you looking for
But
from a numbers perspective?
so we ended up buying it for 190,
190,000
which is yep,
for a 3 unit.
yep,
Wow,
190
that's
for a 3. So that's kind of what drew us to Milwaukee as well. Was we're
yeah,
just kind of looking at cash flow, not so much appreciation, because that's
sure,
going to be a little bit lower in a market like that.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so we ended up buying it for 190, and it just kind of made sense. It kind of fit the 1% rule, um, where rents were, gross rents at market rate are about $2,500 a month. So
Oh yeah, so it beat the 1% rule, which the 1% rule is do the rents equal 1% of the purchase price, and if it does, then look further into that property, see what's going on with it, and is it a good deal, or can it be better, or is there something else going on, right? Like kind of a quick rule of thumb to analyze a property, or know when to stop and maybe analyze it. Even in here in the New Hampshire market, if you see something like that, it's like, wait a second, let me take a further look. Not all properties are going to meet that 1% rule, but it definitely makes you pause and say, let's look at this closer. But out there, it seems like that's kind of the norm. Would you say that?
yeah, exactly. It is a great litmus test of kind of, should I look into this a little further? You know, one thing I would suggest, though, when you have a property like that, that's so old. Now, this is one thing that I wouldn't have really learned unless I just done it myself, is that like you really need to keep your capex high,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because stuff's going to go wrong, and just being an older house, like that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, typically that's the offset, right? Is you get a lower purchase price, maybe some good rents, but there might be some deferred maintenance, either because of previous owners, or just ongoing maintenance and upkeep that's needed because of the older home.
Yeah, exactly. We kind of had to make some repairs off the bat, with that one, like a little bit of foundation repairs. We had some moisture coming into the basement, so we basically had that kind of fixed and repainted. Had a little bit of roofing that we had to replace, as well as turn one of the units, get rid of some trash, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of hard to do from a long distance, but if you have a good team on the ground, then it makes life much easier. I mean, it makes it possible altogether.
Right, right. So did that agent that you reached out to over there in Milwaukee, did they have that team already kind of established? How did you figure out who to work with there?
Yeah, so it kind of made getting, making those connections much easier. And that's, again, one of the benefits to working with an investor who's used to, or an agent who's used to working with investors too, is like, this agent that I worked with had his own properties in Milwaukee. So he had, recommendations for a lender, an insurance provider, and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
they may not always be the best priced either or have the best service. So I definitely suggest kind of, trusting but verifying, figuring out, okay, that's great. He has a recommendation. Does that make sense for me?
Yeah, yeah. I think didn't you tell me about this one? There was something with the insurance. You might have been able to get a better rate, or could get a better rate. Was that this one?
Yeah. So we had some insurance issues at first where essentially we were having a hard time finding a company that was going to cover it for a rate that made sense. So like, again, being my first investment property, I kind of looked at it like, oh, okay, so we'll figure $1,500 for insurance, and
Yeah.
come to find out, once we were under contract, I think the insurance quote we got was like $3,800 for this property with lousy coverages too. So
Really?
uh, so yeah, we ended up, so we didn't hold the deal back on getting closed. We ended up putting that policy into place, but we cut that number in like half with way better coverages by going with a different provider a little bit later down the road. So
Sure, sure. So yeah, doing your diligence on that stuff, especially when you're looking at insurance. I'm looking at insurance right now on a 3-unit that we're closing on hopefully next week. And yeah, we got, one rate of like, I don't know, 1,800. The other was 1,500. And like, well, what's different, right? What's different? One being a broker, an owner's policy, like a commercial type policy, and one's a tenant policy. So like just that alone was different. But then the biggest thing was replacement cost. They had the same liabilities, $1 million policy, but replacement cost on one was like $550,000. I mean, the building at, if you figure 200 square foot to rebuild, it should have been like 415, as a max. So that was a big thing. And so we ended up going with the same guy that I always use, which worked out well. But, we had started to shop around a little bit to see what was different out there. But to your point, yeah, definitely do some shopping around, find the right one. If you're local, New Hampshire, Cross, Matt Smith, he's the best, Cross Insurance. Reach out to me and I can get you his contact info. We'll do that. He's pretty good.
yeah. I mean, all insurance policies are definitely not created equal. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of remembering now, the reason we ran into issues was because I bought this property with a partner, and they were looking at it. So it was an LLC, it was a commercial policy.
Yep.
But each of our LLCs owned our stake
Yeah.
in the property level LLC, which kind of added to the confusion. And they were like, just because of that structure, it was going to be extra money. I'd been told by somebody else, good luck getting insurance. I'm like, well, we're going to have to. We're going to figure it out.
So you were able to keep that same structure and still get a policy that was less expensive with the same coverage or better?
Yeah, exactly. And kind of to your point there, replacement cost is really what drives that price up. Like even this 3-unit in Milwaukee, again, I think that we're around a $425,000 replacement cost on that thing. So that's where it really gets you. That's, it makes a big difference. So
Yeah, and it's funny because it's, some people will say, well, I'm only buying the property for 200,000. Why is 400,000 the replacement cost?
Yeah.
It's just that's the build cost. That's like to
a
have this
lot of concrete, a lot of wood, a lot of drywall, and everything that's gone up in price so much.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to actually cost you more to buy if you wanted to build this property, and significantly more depending on the market you're in.
Yeah, and worse things worse. As long as everybody's safe, if the place burns down, then you get a new building out of it. But
Yeah, exactly. You get to go through the building process, which I'm sure will be just as fun.
yeah, from afar.
Yeah. So you're from afar. Have you ever seen the property?
No, I haven't seen it. So
Just
we
some pictures.
again kind of go off of like we got a home inspection on it because we
Good.
were closing on it. So
Yeah.
we go off of the videos and the pictures of the home inspector, the the property management when they go to turn a unit, like they take all sorts of pictures, and so basically it's it's a lot of trusting your boots on the ground with long term or long distance investing. But really the reason I kind of pivoted to what I'm doing now is because I decided that maybe in the future, but for now it's not really for me. We're going to hold on to that property, but just kind of looking forward here, I'm like, well, all right, we bought this property thousands of miles away at market value.
Yeah.
And just kind of thinking about long term, I want to start buying properties at a discount. So that's kind of why we got into what we were doing now.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
Yeah, exactly.
And those don't typically hit the MLS, and they don't typically hit the public facing sector. I mean, if you're lucky, you can find one, but you got to be quick on it because, I mean, there's one right now in Dover that's well below market value, but it needs some work. Yeah, and there was one in Manchester that I ended up scooping up. That was the same thing. It was well below, but it's needed significant work to get it to market value. So those are the ones that typically, you find out there that come to the public market. But what you're doing is sounds like you're looking for a discount in a different way.
Yeah. So essentially, kind of at the beginning of this year, or it kind of started planning for this last year. We had our first baby in October.
Oh,
and yeah, thanks. And I kind of figured, what better of a way to welcome the baby into the world than to quit my full-time job 2 days beforehand. So that's what I did.
All right. Interesting strategy.
With some reluctant support, we'll call it support, from my wife. I ended up doing that. Got to spend the first few months of the baby by enjoying her, taking care of her, and so basically when the new year rolled around, when my wife went back to work, and I said, all right, well, I'm going to start kind of going in this direction of doing direct to seller marketing to try to get some deals going. So
okay, so you left a full-time W-2 job. Is that what you were
Yeah,
working before?
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So my wife and I have always lived pretty lean. Like, I'm big into the financial independence kind of ideology. So like, we've pretty much always been able to sustain ourselves on one income. So we've always kind of put the rest into savings, but
Yep.
you're not going to build long-term wealth by just tucking money away.
Yeah, saving in a bank account. Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of said, all right, well, you're going to continue to work your W-2 job for our benefits and to keep the roof over our head, continue to take care of the baby and our expenses. And I'm going to do the opposite and spend a lot of that money that we've saved and, pour it into this business that may or may not work out. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a lot of support, I'd say, and trust in your efforts and abilities to get something done. Tell me how it's been going, and like what's some of the stuff you've done.
Yeah, so it's been going well. Just I'm still, so like I said, I'm new to this. It's been 8 months or 8.5 months now since I pretty much started. Almost right at the beginning of the year is when I kind of got going with it. And things have changed a lot in that time too.
Yeah, the market
started off sending, just kind of deciding who are we going to send mail to, and that's one of the primary ways that we do our marketing is through direct mail. And kind of figuring out how do we get in front of motivated sellers, and that's something we're still working on as well. So
yeah, making some tweaks along the way, I'm sure.
Yeah, actually, I'm going. I know I told you the other day. I'm kind of going through a major overhaul right now of how I organize my data and what lists I'm pulling to try to kind of get in front of people who may potentially have the motivations to sell. But at the end of the day, too, I kind of have to bring myself back to my roots and remember why I started doing this. And it's not to get rich. It's not to buy properties for pennies on the dollar. But what does a wholesaler do? Well, what does an agent do? They connect a buyer with a seller.
Right.
We're essentially doing the same thing, just to in a much different way. We're connecting sellers that may not necessarily have a property that's going to have a good time on the MLS, that may need some repairs. They may be in a troubled financial position, and they just may need to walk away from the property and not have to deal with it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we're connecting those properties with buyers who are typically investors who are willing to put that work in and make this a nice turnkey property for somebody who wants to live there with their family.
Yeah, yeah, either for themselves or for someone else, either going back onto the market. From an agent perspective, that would be certainly something that, that we would do is, to be able to buy something like that from a wholesaler, at a discount, like you'd mentioned, and then, get it fixed up, put it on the MLS, or, if it's an end buyer that finds out about it and wants to do the work themselves to live there. This is a couple options that I'm sure you're able to provide for, a buyer for the property.
Yeah, exactly. And it really, it can be a win-win for everybody. So like, I'll just touch on a deal that I did back in April. I think we ended up closing in May, but so it was a seller who basically had this property for a long time. He'd inherited it, and he had a tenant in one side, and the other side was completely vacant, needed a ton of work. I estimated probably around $70,000 in rehab.
Wow.
And so we just kind of looked at it and said, what are you looking to get out of this? And he kind of gave us his number. And he just wanted to be done with it, because he was at the point where he was starting to spend his Social Security checks on kind of trying to do little fixes here and there, but just keeping up with the cost of materials and the cost of labor. He never would have been able to get anything done. So we ended up offering him like right about what he wanted. Made sense for us.
Yeah.
We sold it to another investor, or a contractor actually, who got a good deal on it.
Yep.
And he's going to put some guys to work, and they're currently working on fixing the property up. And I think he's going to hold on to it for a while, rent out the other unit, and add a nice rental unit to the community. And so it really can be a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, so it sounds like, like you would mention, the seller was certainly in a financial, probably emotional and mental distress situation, right? Having to spend his money coming from Social Security checks just to renovate this property that he owns, and doesn't know what to do. And then you kind of come along and give him an opportunity to be done with it. And then you have a buyer that wants it, and he wants to put some people to work. They're going to make income helping them out, getting it ready. And yeah, like you said, a new rental unit in the community. That's great. What community was that in, or the area?
That was in Greenville.
Oh, okay. Greenville. Nice. Yeah. So what kind of markets are you looking in, or focusing on, or shifting to, I guess?
Yeah. So my efforts have mostly been targeted toward Hillsborough County, just because of the population here, and there's a lot more properties to kind of go after, and with our marketing dollars. But I think I'm going to be expanding a little bit, probably to Merrimack and Rockingham counties as well. Just kind of as we go on here, as I'm trying to kind of build my lists and make a little more sense of things. So one thing that we've also done too is invested a lot into our digital marketing presence. So working on search engine optimization. So again, we can get in front of the people who are looking for, somebody like our services, and also kind of build up our brand's reputability and kind of trust. So.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and you're still young in the business and of this business, but how's it looking this year? And from the start of this year to end of this year, I mean, I know the market's changed, and some people have kind of put a pause, some people have ramped up as far as whether they want to sell or not. Have you seen any changes in the marketplace? I know from an agent perspective, buyers are more picky, which is good, and they can be. But we're still seeing some competition out there on the homes. It's still pretty competitive. The ones that are on the market just a few days still. I mean, we're still seeing 3, 4, 5 days on market on a majority of the homes, but there are still some homes that are kind of hanging around. Have you seen any changes, or when you're talking to people, anything like that?
We have seen that some people kind of still think that they're sitting on a pot of gold.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think I told you about the gentleman who had reached out to us who has a piece of property that he seemed to think had 2 extra buildable lots on it, plus the value of the house he was looking for almost $1 million. And we've kind of done some research into it. I really, I would like to give anybody who wants us to buy their house the most money possible. Obviously, we just can't lose money, and that wouldn't be a business if we did.
Wouldn't be a sustainable business for sure.
Yeah, I could try it as my humanitarian mission, but
unless you need a write-off
somewhere. Yeah, but so I think people still think. It kind of took them a while to adjust to the fact that the market got really hot, and they're like, "Oh, well, I have this property that's worth way more. I have tons of equity, and I could sell it." And then I think the only thing that kept a lot of people from doing that is the question, "Well, where do I go?"
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So now we're kind of again lagging behind a little bit with sellers' expectations, and you probably are seeing it too, where people maybe saw what their house was worth on Zillow, for example. Not like that's accurate, but a year ago or 6 months ago, and now it's less, and they probably want that initial number still.
Yeah, well, and exactly. So things in real estate tend to lag a little bit. Sellers and buyers and the market itself tends to lag behind, the general economy. But yeah, I mean, now it's tough because my neighbor just sold for $30,000 over asking. I've got the same house. And so, okay, well, what's different about yours? You might have that same value of a home, but how does yours compare to that one? Is it nicer? Is it bigger? So taking a lot of those variables into account, yeah, it may be worth that, but let's take a look at it and let's give you a realistic estimate of value. The market eventually dictates. I mean, we had a house down the road from me. I think they were listed at like $699. I'm like, there's no way. And sure enough, it went pending, I think, and then the agent changed the price in the MLS to $759. I'm like, unbelievable. But then I go, oh my God, so is my house worth that? But I look at it and I go, no, it's not. Like that one's got an in-ground pool. That one's got a great outdoor space. That one's got some different features about it. So I know mine's not worth that, but I know it's, obviously increased in value. What that value is, well, then that's kind of where I come into play. And I say, okay, let's see what the difference is and make my adjustments based upon that for a value of my property. But I want to go back to what you were looking for numbers on this long distance investment. I know you told us the purchase price about $190, but what were you looking for to get, and what did you get, I guess, in regards to the return on that investment? Either like what metrics are you looking at?
So a lot of people look at like the percentage for return on investment of kind of the amount of capital they have deployed. We were kind of looking at it more like the bigger picture of thinking, what are we going to cash flow each month after we put away for our reserves, which would be property maintenance. Even if you're going to maintain the property yourself or property management, I would still factor that in there because it just kind of gives you a little bit extra of a cushion. Obviously, I'm not going to self-manage a property from 1,000 miles away.
Sure.
Some people do. I don't know how they do it, but
experience.
So yeah, after you're putting aside your money for your property management and your capital expenditures and your vacancy and your repairs and maintenance, we're just kind of looking at the monthly cash flow on this on this property, and kind of went from there.
Yeah, you wanted to hit a certain target. That's awesome. That's great. Well, hey,
Yeah.
Jeremy, tell everybody where they can find more about you, more about your company, what you're doing.
Yeah, so you can certainly check out our website. It's tallpinepropertiesnh.com. And feel free to add me on Facebook. I'm not super present there, but I do check in from time to time. So it's Jeremy Joseph is my name on Facebook. Try to make it hard enough to find me, but I guess I'm giving away my secret now.
Yeah, yeah. You got to know you in order to get to you.
And yeah, you can certainly add me on Instagram as well. It's Jeremy_invests. And yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't really touch too much on kind of what we're doing here, just that we're wholesaling. But I'm happy to chat with anybody who has questions or wants to know more about it. I'm happy to share what I know and what I'm learning.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think there's definitely another episode here. I'm glad that we were able to kind of briefly touch on this whole different world, and give enough for someone that wants to listen back in on another episode. We'll definitely have you back to maybe more expand on what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Yeah, and I will just add real quick. To me, in my mind, the best investment you can make is in yourself. So join masterminds, even if they're expensive. Pay for them if you're really committed to it. Yeah. I've spent a lot of money on joining these masterminds, and I wouldn't be where I am without them. So
no, that's great. Be around people that are doing what you want to do. I think that's the idea, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jeremy. And anybody out there can find me and Matt on www.findnhhomesforsale.com, or hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, and we'll happy to chat. That wraps us up for episode 6, Money Matters, Matt and Rich. Thank you.